And particularly, looking at that first impression. So let's talk about the Toll Plaza at Indiana Beach. She set the tone for what you could expect and the mood that you should be in throughout your visit, throughout your experience. That this now kind of brings us full circle. This is part of our thread line here, leads to those moments that are facilitated by guests related to their own experience that indirectly were done by the staff because the staff created the environment that you were in. Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Matt, I am so excited. I'm doing great. I'm even... No, I'm not going to say it. But how are you?
I am fantastic, and I have a question for you.
All right. Can't wait.
Would you consider yourself in the realm of what you do within the industry and how much you love the industry? Would you consider yourself an industry nerd?
Yeah, I'd say so. Okay.
Yeah. Why is that? Why would you put yourself in that category?
It's interesting. I think even the term nerd, it probably has a negative connotation a lot, but I think it's about someone who's passionate and enthusiastic about a specific topic and is very proficient in that realm, and perhaps organizes life events or even travel around those types of topics that they nerd out on. So I do that when I can, not as often as I'd like to.
Sure.
But yeah, I'd say so. What about you?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. 100%. In fact, speaking of life events and travel opportunities, you know very well that every year, two friends and I organize the Coaster Nerd Con, which is just our time to go to as many parks as we can, visit them, and completely nerd out, to your point of just looking at the little details, focusing on, what we might do if we were the park manager, all those kind of fun things. And we do that for a week. We ride as many roller coasters as we can. And I thought it would be kind of fun to kind of talk about some of the lessons that we got from that and some of the things that I experienced over that period.
I cannot wait to hear the lessons that you learned from it, because I know that you cannot nerd out on something without having some actionable takeaways that could potentially make for a podcast episode. And can I just say too, I love how well you documented the journey. I know when you do it every year, just about every year. I think maybe COVID hampered that a little bit, yeah. But I enjoyed, I would say, living vicariously. And there was one post in particular that I thought was kind of made me chuckle a little, and it was two pictures. One was a funnel cake that you had just purchased, and the second was an empty plate, but you strategically had three plastic forks on the plate. And I laughed at that, and I was like, all right, Matt is posting made sure that the forks were on it so no one would think that Matt just ate this himself. This was consumed by one person. This was, yes, it's a large funnel cake, but it was shared amongst three people.
It absolutely was shared among three people, and it was, if I think back, it was our only funnel cake of the trip, and it was at Indiana Beach. But it was a very, very good funnel cake. A really, really good funnel cake. So actually, the way I do have a bunch of lessons and things I'd love to get your opinion on, but I've actually got some of my favorite moments that I'd like to share with you first. And by the way, for anybody listening, Josh has no idea what we're going to be talking about. So this is
so unprepared,
so unprepared, completely off the cuff. But I want to get your take from a guest experience perspective on these sort of moments, because we all often talk about the fact that our industry is based on moments, right? And you have these memories, and you have, certain things that will kind of etch themselves in your brain. And these four things, I think, will always be with me. And I'd like to kind of share these first, like these moments from different places, and maybe see if there's a line that kind of connects them. Right.
Okay.
So from your guest experience, expertise, and nerdosity, is there something that kind of brings them together? So
great word, by the way.
Thank you. So I'll start and kind of go in order that they happened. So some of these actually had no involvement from an actual team member, which could be a whole different discussion in and of itself. So you've been to Knoebels, correct?
No.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, okay. I thought you had. Okay. Well, anyway, at Knoebels, there's a coaster called the Phoenix, which I
knew that.
I knew you knew that. Well,
I know how much they charged for it at when they opened it.
Yes. So we got to ride Phoenix. Well, I shouldn't say we got to. We chose to ride Phoenix 17 times. We literally spent 4.5 hours just at Phoenix and just kept going over and over and over again. So as you do, you go in different seats, and you just kind of pile in wherever. And this one ride, I happened to sit in the third seat, which Brian Knoebel will tell you is his favorite seat, the third seat in the first car. And right in front of me, there were three small kids, three small boys. One was in the very front, and then two were in the seat right in front of me. And as you leave the station of the Phoenix, and you turn right and you go into a tunnel, but there's probably, 30 feet of kind of open space where there's a fence. And other guests, it's a great kind of picture opportunity, right? Because other guests can stand there, they can see their friends in the train as they go by, they can video record them, whatever. And so I happened to see what I thought was maybe the dad of these three boys, right? And he was recording them coming out of the station on the Phoenix front seat. And next to him was another guy, maybe his brother or a friend or whatever. And so what I did, and again, this was just a fun moment, is I gave them rabbit ears behind because I saw that they were being recorded. So I gave rabbit ears behind the two kids in front of me. And it wasn't so much who I think the dad's reaction was, who was filming, but his buddy starts pointing and laughing and thinking that's the greatest thing in the world, right? And so this really stuck with me because it was a guest experience that guests created, right? This wasn't something that Knoebels created. It wasn't something that, a team member created, but it was a really cool moment between guests. And it really solidified to me how important these moments are. Okay. So that's experience number one. Okay. Experience number two happened at Hersheypark. So at Hersheypark, we were binging the coaster that we like the most, which is Candymonium. So super smooth, butter smooth, tons and tons of airtime. So we went on it a bunch of times. Well, there was a young lady who was working there, and I think she was from the Philippines. Her name tag said boss. And I asked her about it, and she said, well, my name in the Philippines is hard to pronounce in English, so we just put boss on my name tag. I said, well, that's cool, boss. Thanks, boss. And every time I saw her, I'd be like, hey, what's up, boss? And she would get a big smile on her face, and she would move up to a different position on the load platform, and I would say, hey, boss, or thanks, boss, or what. I would always refer to her by her name, and again, big smiles on her face. And that was just another thing where again, a guest was. And maybe it's from my upbringing in the industry, but I saw that as an opportunity to interact with people. And it was just something that I really, really enjoyed and loved the fact that we got to have that kind of interaction. So she played right along, she smiled and, was really enjoying it. So that's number two. So we've got the guy at the Phoenix, we've got boss at Candymonium. When we got to Indiana Beach and we got to the toll booth where you pay for parking, there was a very nice woman there, probably in her 60s, maybe 70s, very personable, joking around with us. And she said, now, when you buy this ticket, like there is no going out and coming back. So if you go in, she goes, you stay in there until you hate it. Like that is the her level of like, then you can leave, right? Because you've gotten your money's worth and you don't want to have to pay for parking twice, right? So you stay in there till you hate it, which I thought was just really funny. So that's number 3. Number 4 happened at Cedar Point. So at Cedar Point, we encountered about a 4-hour rain delay. So everything was shut down for 4 hours. Excuse me. And as the clouds parted and the sky opened up, we were heading for Steel Vengeance. So we get, right in the like by the train track area.
Yeah.
And we hear the greeter on the microphone say, the weather has started to clear, but we don't know when Steel Vengeance is going to open. Now, there's a whole bunch of people that have already lined up. They're ready to go. The fast lane people are there, the regular people, and they start cheering. And they're like, woohoo! He's like, no. He's like, nothing's happening. Like, there's nothing happening here. Like, we don't know when it's going to open. And so,
I don't see any lightning. I don't feel any rain.
I don't see anything.
Why isn't it open?
I mean, they were so nice about it. I mean, the guests and stuff. But then, a couple of minutes later, a couple of minutes go by and we see a train cycling. And so, all right, we're getting close. And so the guy at the greeter position, he picks up the microphone. He goes, just a reminder, no loose articles on the train, blah, blah, blah. Put your stuff in a locker, the whole 9 yards, does the whole spiel. Mm-hmm. And people start cheering for that too, right? I mean, people are just amped up. So then the phone rings. The phone rings down by the greeter position, and we're all like, okay, this is it. This is it. So the guy, this I thought was super funny. He picks up the microphone again and he goes, just a reminder, there's no loose articles, blah, 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 blah. He does the whole spiel exactly the same way. And then he goes, and by the way, Steel Vengeance is open. And so again, the crowd just goes crazy. But that I thought was was a cool moment. Like, he didn't have to do that. You know what I mean? He didn't have to kind of go to that length to kind of entertain the crowd. So those were 4, I would call, special memories from this trip that really were really, really cool from a guest perspective. So
sure.
I'd love your take on those.
You want me to draw a thread line?
If there is one, I don't know, maybe there isn't one.
Sure. So for the first one, and actually even tying into the first 2. So the first one being the bunny ears photobomb, and the second one being you making Boss's day. You said she kept smiling. She was interactive. She enjoyed the banter, if you will. We're about guests creating circumstances for themselves, and we really do provide, or we create a huge stress on the service that the staff is delivering to the guest, while at the same time knowing that actually is a portion of their experience. Whereas most of it, while guests are waiting in line and when they're, playing games with each other and singing songs and, whatever it is, it's the guest in a way is creating the experience for themselves. And like you said, like Knoebels didn't create that experience. No, but they created Knoebels, right? So that same type of thing probably wouldn't have happened at your grocery store, right? So it needed to be in that environment in which that type of circumstance could happen and could be fun and could be entertaining, and like you said, create a moment that creates that memory from that experience. Had nothing to do with ride, had nothing to do with the employees, had nothing to do with the business. It was the memory, right? And that's what you took away from it, and then kind of tying that into to your interaction with Boss at Candymonium, that in many cases, the employee experience is driven by the guest experience. If leadership is on their game and doing a phenomenal job, and recognizing staff and coaching staff and just providing the best leadership that they can, and everyone in the park is grumpy, all the guests are having a bad day, whatever it is, maybe it's that weather delay, that's going to negatively impact the employee experience. Whereas you just gave it a good example of the reverse of that. The guests were having a good time, therefore that spilled into the employee experience side of it. Maybe we could even kind of put a pin on that as we always continue to explore the intersection between guest and employee experience, and that the employees have a huge influence over the guest experience. Well, the guests have a huge influence over the employee experience as well. The third one being the Indiana Beach, right? What was it? You're stuck in there until you hate it.
No, stay in there until you hate it.
Stay in there until you hate it. This past weekend, my dad was in town to visit Chicago, and he was going to an event called Bass Bash. He's a bassist. I know you know that, and it was held at this bar called Reggie's, which is kind of like in the South Loop area of Chicago. It's actually close to Chinatown, and they have a big sign in front, right underneath the name of the bar, Reggie's. It says, "We're not happy until you're not happy." And so that's kind of what that reminded me of you will stay here until you're not having a good time anymore. Because if you're still having a good time, there's no reason to leave, right? Bit obscure, right? Yeah. Both of those. In the instance of this woman at the toll plaza, she's probably said that before, right? You know, that's probably one of those things that she says, "Hey, I've tried and true. It throws guests off completely, but you know, I get a good laugh." She also read the room. She saw you and Alan and Darren, right?
Yep.
If it was you know, parents with like 3 small kids, maybe she would say, maybe she wouldn't, or so. So she was able to identify her audience in that moment and be able to say something that she knew she could have an impact on the guest experience that went far beyond the functional need of please pay for parking. You know, I am here to take your money for parking. No, I am here to provide a first impression of the park, and I'm going to get you entertained right before you even go in. So the memory that you just shared from the Indiana Beach didn't even happen inside the park, right? You know, it didn't even happen before you got into the parking lot. So then the Cedar Point one, Steel Vengeance, and I think that the takeaway was the way that the employee announced that Steel Vengeance was open was a creative way. He read his audience. He said, I could probably say I had a peanut butter sandwich for lunch today, and everyone would go nuts, right? Yeah. And decided to play around with the energy that was right in front of him. So he was able to again do more than the functional job, even though it wasn't that much more, right? He had to announce the loose article policy. He had to announce that the ride was open, but it was the way in which he did that, well, now for you, created that moment, created a memory. And that, you know, reminds me of you know, how we talk about creating a consistent experience. And we give our staff scripts and they have to read this word for word. You know, even if you have a script, the way that you read the script and the way that you deliver that is about your personality, and your personality is the one who's going to make those words be engaging and feel personal. You know, every movie has a script, and if they hire an A-list celebrity who's a top performing actor, if it's Tom Hanks, and it's not just that they're saying those words, it's that the way they're saying it, because anybody could say it, but Tom Hanks is going to deliver it the way that Tom Hanks will, right? So I'd say that's my takeaways. Hopefully there was a thread line in there somewhere. The guest experience and the employee experience definitely have influence over each other. And you know what? That guy at Steel Vengeance probably enjoyed the fact that he was able to say, oh, and by the way, Steel Vengeance is now open, right? So the energy of the collective guests around him was able to probably make him satisfied too.
Well, I think that's one of the things that I took away too, is that collective energy of so many different situations that we encountered, because that's what our industry does, right? You know, we have these moments, or we have these opportunities for people to be in a situation where you get caught up in the energy of what is happening, and it's cool, right? I mean, that's what we sell, if you will, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things that you mentioned that I hadn't even really thought of was how the guest experience a lot of times isn't actually influenced by the team member in that moment. So like you said, you know, if guests are singing songs, or they're doing something that's away from an attraction, or away from a game, or away from a merchandise location, they've got to be in the right sort of happy, fun mindset to have fun with the people that they're there with, right? And I think that is something that I don't know that we talk about enough, but it's incredibly powerful.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
If, and I'm not saying, yeah, I'm saying if, because I know that this wasn't the case, but if at Knoebels, if every single employee you interacted with was rude and was having a bad day and was grumpy, would you still have done that bunny ears photo bomb? And do you think that the dad's buddy would have seen that and laughed?
Well, since we spent most of our time at the Phoenix, I would say if that crew had been rude and they were not making the
or even dry. What if they were
yeah.
dispatching? Yeah.
I mean, if that were the case, it might have dampened our experience in the station, and maybe I wouldn't have done it. Maybe I would have been sitting in that seat going, kind of, you're kind of recovering from that negative station experience until you get, on the ride, you go through the tunnel, you go up the lift hill. Okay, now I can enjoy the coaster, right?
Or can you?
Or can I? Right? Yeah. Maybe I'm like,
Whoa, arms are up. Yeah.
But I have to say one other experience with the Phoenix was that there's a team member right at the entrance who is supposed to either take your tickets or look at your wristband or whatever it is to get on the ride. And I think she was there the entire time that we were there. Like maybe I'm in 4.5 hours, I'm sure she took a break, but we saw her a lot. And she's like, back again. You did it. back again. And it was just a fun interaction that we had with her. And that put us in a positive mood. Not that we weren't anyway, but just kind of coming in, we knew we were going to see her again. We had a little interaction. We all smiled, and then we got into the line. So absolutely, it all adds up. But had that crew been just surly or, like you said, just kind of blah there, maybe the experience wouldn't have been what it was.
And not only that, but you probably would have been walking around the park like that trash can's overflowing. Bathrooms out of paper towels, not enough ice in my soda cup. When you think about whether it's the first impression or kind of those interactions throughout the day, they set the tone for the remainder of the experience. And if the first impression is positive, then you might not even notice that the trash can's overflowing, or it's, there was only one trash can overflowing, or whatever it is. But when it's kind of dampered, like you said, surly, then you start to think, well, if that's what this experience is like, well, then what's this over here? They might be completely disconnected. Like I'm over at this ride, and well, now these ride employees aren't friendly when they might be just the same. Whatever it is, it would be something that would be overlooked, and that's definitely something that it seems conceptual, but there's really a lot of data behind it that I've observed from measuring guest experience, and particularly looking at that first impression. So let's talk about the toll plaza at Indiana Beach. She set the tone for what you could expect and the mood that you should be in throughout your visit, throughout your experience. That this now kind of brings us full circle. This is part of our thread line here, leads to those moments that are facilitated by guests related to their own experience that indirectly were done by the staff because the staff created the environment that you were in. Right.
And I think back to the mood that put us in, and we're like, there's no way we're going to hate this. So I mean, that was positive, right? Mm-hmm. And even when we left, we're like, I don't know if we can leave yet because we don't hate it.
What do you mean the park's closed?
What do you mean?
Yeah.
So I think things like that. And you mentioned it with the Steel Vengeance guy, kind of using your personality, using allowing team members to use their creativity. Kind of along those same lines when we were at a bunch of different places. I mean, Kings Island, Great Adventure, the people doing the ride spiels, I mean, they were funny, and they were engaging. And it was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for, right? Yes, I can get on El Toro, I can get on Mystic Timbers, but part of the experience is hearing what goofy things the ride operator might say.
Well, my biggest memory from when you and I did Attraction Pros Take Las Vegas was when we did the zip line. The zip line was fun. The staff made it memorable.
Yeah.
They were funny, they were hilarious. That like I would just go back and wait in line, for and I would still want to do the zip line at the end, but I mean, it was it was the way that they created the environment around them that amped up the enthusiasm of the guests. The rides are great, right? The rides are the ride, right? That hopefully will be the consistent experience, for every guest. But the mood that you are in when you get on the ride, or when you see the show, or when you do this, when you're in the exhibit, or whatever it is very much influenced by the staff, even if it indirectly influences guest facilitated elements of their experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you found a thread.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
That was fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, side note too, is I know I wasn't on this trip, but I took a picture of you while you were at Cedar Point.
Oh, from the plane?
Yeah. I was flying from New York to Chicago, and I rarely ever sit on a window seat. So I selected seat D, but it was 2-2, so I went A, B, C, D. So I thought D would be the aisle. And I'm like, so I'm on the right side of the plane if you're facing the cockpit. And I look out at one point, I was like, oh, there's Cleveland. And I was like, wait, if that's Cleveland, I know what's coming up. So I got a good few pictures of Cedar Point. Then when I landed, you tweeted from Cedar Point, and I was like, well, wait a minute. That's in this picture.
So if you zoom in real close, can you see me?
Glad I got to be a part of it. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, you're welcome anytime. We welcome other nerds, and we had Mark Rosenzweig join us for quite a bit of the day at Kings Island. So we have other people that join in. We're more than happy to. You got to have the same level of nerd, which Mark definitely does. Yeah. So that was cool. So I've got a couple of other things that I wanted to kind of bring up, and I think they're good takeaways. They're lessons. Some of the things I posted on social media, but I think they're definitely worth repeating and talking a little bit about. So the first one is actually from Six Flags Great Adventure. Okay. And one of the things that we saw there was they had this massive poster, probably, I don't know, 4 feet wide, 5 feet tall, something like that. And it had a picture of team members on it. And it said, give a shout out to your favorite employee. It had a QR code. And it even said, are they being safe? Are they providing service? Is it because of cleanliness? So they kind of gave you some criteria, but all you had to do was click on that QR code, and it brought up a form for you to give positive. Well, I guess you could give any kind of feedback, but they were asking for recognition. And I just thought it was so cool and so easy to be able to provide some recognition. And what that left me with was, and you've talked about this a lot too, is giving feedback should be easy, right? Mm-hmm. It should be something that isn't so cumbersome that people aren't going to want to do it. And I mean, I remember I got the QR code. Alan, Darren, and I were walking probably to El Toro, and I was putting some things in there about some of the team members that we had interacted with, and it was just easy. Mm-hmm. Again, it was something that I posted, and a lot of people really felt like that was something that if they hadn't done that already would be a positive thing to do to get some of that guest feedback.
Yeah. And like you said, giving feedback should be easy. And the traditional model would be, go to guest services and leave a comment. Or there was the valet attendant many years ago who said, here's your valet instructions and here's a TripAdvisor card. Please leave a review about me.
Yeah.
About what? About how you gave me the instructions on this card. But presenting it there, and also what I think is important too is to say, like, to give a shout out to a team member, because I think it's one thing to say, if you have feedback, do this, and then that might make the guest think, I don't think I have any feedback to give. But if you want to give a shout out to a team member, well, I'm interacting with employees all day. The team members are the ones driving the experience. Yeah, maybe, if my hot dog was cold, like I'd want to leave that type of feedback too. But tying it to the employees there is where there's probably a lot of actions, a lot of quick actions that can come from management. So that's probably the best way to be able to drive up a high amount of actionable feedback. And done with the QR codes. People now know how to use QR codes. 3 years ago, I didn't know how to use a QR code. I said, these are pointless. This is dying. Like no one will, this will never gain traction. was wrong about that. And yeah, so it's a good way to be able to do that. Now, did you see those signs in multiple places throughout the park?
There were at least two that I remember.
Okay.
At least two in two different places.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the interface like? Once you pulled that up, what did you see?
I think it asked for, some demographic like your name, stuff. And I can't remember if that was a required field or not, but then it just said, what did the team member do? Basically, and it was an open verbatim that you could put in there. So
Okay.
Like I said, it was pretty simple. Like I didn't have to go through a whole bunch of hoops and jump through a whole bunch of different screens and things like that. So pulling it up because of the QR code was easy, but also going through the actual interface was pretty easy too.
Yeah. So it was just text-based. You didn't fill out a survey at all.
Meaning
you didn't.
Oh, no. There weren't questions. It was all just my verbatim.
Okay, cool. So they're amping up the qualitative data that they're getting from it, which in many cases can be more actionable. As long as and then perhaps they could find a way to track that, and we'd have to dive deeper into that or have a representative from Six Flags. So if you're listening, right, we want to know more about how you're doing this. So cool, good.
Yeah. Well, actually, to that point, one thing I just thought of is I don't know where the data goes or how they use it, right? Which you and I know that's like over half the battle, right? You've got to do something with that data. It's one thing to collect it. But I don't know like how quickly that gets back to the team member or what they do with that. Is it, kind of aggregated or is it put in, word for word? I don't know how that system reports that out.
So then there's an opportunity there to enhance it, to be able to connect it back to the guest that say, Matt, we got your comments about Terrence at El Toro, whatever it was. So you said you were walking to El Toro, like that. Yeah. I don't know, making it up, obviously. And we were able to recognize him, and your feedback goes a long way, and we can't wait to see you again on your next visit. So so they could take it to another level as far as not only are they doing something with it, but they're letting you know that they're doing something with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. So the next thing I want to talk about brings us back to our episode with Brian Yessian.
Okay.
Remember that?
I do.
And that is that
you all out there remember that. If not, it was right around 150, wasn't it?
Probably.
Or right around 200, I meant. Sorry.
You're much better at remembering those off the top of your head, the numbers. But Brian's all about audio, right? And how things sound and that kind of thing. And so my takeaway from a lot of attractions that we experienced was that sound matters. Right? Audio
matters. Episode 201, by the way.
Yeah. Perfect. Episode 201. Yeah. So take a listen to that one. But here's what I took away. Remember I talked about those ride spiels. Well, if you can hear them and they're clear and they're loud enough, it's great. But when the team member is eating the microphone and you can't understand them, or it's too soft, or even if it's too loud, that takes away from the experience, right? So that's kind of on the spiel side. So if you have people that are actually speaking into a microphone on a ride deck or wherever it is, it's important that system can support the message that you're trying to get out there. But also, and I'm sure this happens in other attractions, but I'm going to use this one as an example. Have you ever been on the Houdini's Great Escape at Great Adventure?
Matt, I'm going to save you some time. I have never been to any of the Eastern PA parks. I'm embarrassed to say that, but
okay, it's okay.
Knoebels, Hershey, Great Adventure, or Dorney are on my list.
Good.
Very high on.
So this attraction is one of the most unique I've been on because it's modeled after something from Coney Island, which I didn't even know about, called the Haunted Swing, I think, where you're basically in two rows. At least this is how this was set up. So you come into a room and you're in two rows of seats, almost like pews at a church or something, right? So then a lap bar comes down and you're all kind of locked in. And these there's 4 rows, 2 rows are facing each other. And so there's a big space in the middle. And this whole thing that you're on starts to swing, right? That's kind of cool. But then the outer room, if you picture yourself like in a room in the Haunted Mansion, that whole outer room spins. right? So you get the sensation of going upside down.
Oh, so it is spinning. I'm watching your hand motions here, but it's spinning
Sorry.
vertically, right? It's not just spinning around you horizontally. It is spinning around you vertically. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're listening to the audio podcast, check out the video on YouTube and you will see my hands doing the gesture. And so you are swinging on a swing, like on a swing, right? And you never go upside down, but because the room is spinning around you, it starts to feel that way. And it's a really interesting sensation. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because there's a pretty lengthy pre-show to this, and it was really quiet, and I couldn't hear it. And one of the guys I was with, I think Alan said, well, it's because we're in New Jersey and, people are just, loud and they're talking and they're not listening and blah, blah, blah. But there was one part where there was a film and I think it was captioned. So we could kind of hear and see what was going on in the film, but there was all this other stuff and it was a cool pre-show, but you couldn't really hear it. And whether they just didn't, announce that, hey, we're starting and, you should pay attention or whatever it was, I think it really took away from the experience. And then when we got into the room, the audio wasn't all that great in there either. The sensation and the motion was really cool. But I think when you talk about from a story perspective and, really enhancing all of the senses, audio really matters. And so I think my takeaway from this is really thinking about the entire experience. So if you are, a manager of an attraction or an area that has a microphone or a sound system, go into that area and really listen. And, if depending on your organization, if you have techs and, you can bring them in to tweak it or whatever you need to do, because it really can enhance the experience a lot. You could do nothing different to that Houdini's attraction, except, I don't know, turn up the sound or make it more clear or, create, some sort of starting point where people are kind of quiet and they actually listen. And, the enjoyment of that attraction would go up exponentially just because of the sound. And then again, on ride decks, there was one, I want to say it was I never get the name of this right. The big drop ride at Great Adventure that's on the side of King Ka. We always call it Jumanji, but that's not the name of it.
In the actual structure?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So the operator there, he was really doing a good job of trying to engage people and talk to them and stuff like that. But he was kind of eating the microphone and you could barely understand him. So I could tell what he was trying to do. And if he either had some training on that microphone or maybe it was a better system, I'm not sure. I mean, again, that could have really enhanced that experience. So thank you, Brian. Audio matters.
Yeah. I was once doing a guest experience workshop a couple of years ago, and I was mic'd up and the mic itself was distorted. I don't know if the battery pack was running low or whatever it was. But like the first hour of my presentation, like I think the audience heard like every third word or something like that. So thankfully, like hopefully my voice was loud enough naturally that they'd be able to pull it together. But then and I'm watching the audience like being like, oh, they're not as engaged as I thought they would be. And then they switched out my mic an hour later, and then I could see the energy in the room get a lot better. I was like, oh, they can actually hear me much better. So yeah, audio matters.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. Cool.
And yes, thank you, Brian. Yes, Ian, episode 201.
Yes, episode 201. You will hear why audio matters in that episode. So, but again, as we're talking about specifically in this case, the guest experience that could be enhanced even more by the employee experience, it's sometimes those little things that will allow that to happen. Right. So that to me was a big takeaway.
And on that note too, like if anybody goes back and like listens to the first few episodes of this podcast, they'd be like, oh, audio matters. So yeah.
But we learned
very, very early days.
we're getting better. We've got better microphones and better production and stuff like that. So this is kind of along the same line because I talked about audio and sound matters, but also presentation matters. And there's two examples that I have here. Number one is Hersheypark. I don't know if you saw my post about the Ferris wheel appetizer presentation.
I did.
So they've got in their chocolatier restaurant, which is, in the new section that they've just built with the new gate that they have, which is absolutely beautiful. They've got an appetizer that comes out on a Ferris wheel. So it's like, I don't know, 2.5 feet tall. And it's got, little plates on, where the Ferris wheel cars would be. And when we saw that was available, it almost didn't matter what the appetizers were. Like, we were going to get this thing because it was so cool. So
probably didn't matter how much it cost either.
No, it absolutely did not matter the cost or almost what food was on it. We were going to get it because it was such a cool presentation. Right. So that's one thing. And then when we were at Kings Island, I was so impressed by many things. I mean, Kings Island has really knocked it out of the park for their 50th anniversary. Their team members were textbook, or maybe I should say handbook, perfect when it came to their wardrobe. Right. I mean, you could put any of the people that we saw that day in the handbook as an example of what you want your team members to look like. And to me, those two things, like the presentation of the apps, the presentation of the team members, again, really upped the experience that we had as guests, because it goes back to everything that we talk about. Let's talk about this, the team members for a second, right? When we see a team member that is that looks like we expect them to look, right? Automatically, we think the ride's going to be safer, right? Automatically, we think that the experience is going to be better because the team members are looking so good and so polished. And then put with that the fact that, at every ride cycle, they were waving, right? If you're watching the video, you see my hand waving. They would wave as we would leave the station, and they were very personable, and they were fast, they were efficient, but still very personable. And so the way that we see things absolutely matters. And this goes with cleanliness, this goes with paint, this goes with everything. So when I think about the presentation from the guest side, I also think about this from the employee side, right? If you go into work and your break area is a dump, right? Or the back of house areas are just in disarray because, well, the guests aren't going to see it. I think that's a negative impact to the employees.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot there. I kind of like how you sort of touched on it twofold right there. The presentation matters in terms of, you talk about the appetizer at Hershey with the Ferris wheel, and then from the team member standpoint, and I completely agree with that. And that's what led to a lot of uniform and wardrobe standards over the years that were very strict. And interestingly, they've interestingly is the word, but as times have changed, as far as the way that they've become a little bit more relaxed, is when society has said someone with a visible tattoo on their arm doesn't mean they're not professional, whereas previously, that's just what it meant, right? That's just what it was assumed to be, and it's clearly not the case anymore. So as long as that presentation continues to follow, I would say where the rest of society outside the park is deeming it to be, then that's really important. The Ferris wheel appetizer at Hersheypark, if you think about that, that's way more expensive than a regular plate. I don't know how much they paid for that, but way more expensive than any other way that it could be presented, probably very well on a plate that was divided out into multiple components. But you were much more likely to order it because of the way that it came, and it acts as a billboard for itself. The fact that it has vertical representation on it means that people around the restaurant, maybe even outside the restaurant, can see that people are getting that, and they're going, I want that. And to your point, I don't care what's being served on it. Hopefully that was really good too. I imagine it probably was, but it enhances the overall demand for that appetizer, which I'm guessing probably cost more than most of the other appetizers or other items on the menu. You had to have it because you had to have it. Is that right?
Yeah. And the food was really good. So let's not discount that part of it, right?
Exactly.
Once it came out, the food was good. But to your point, we also saw all these Ferris wheels showing up on tables all around us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's when I worked at Legoland and I worked for Pixel, so I was overseeing all souvenir photo. We could print your picture on a Lego brick wall. I'm sure they can still do that today. And that was our hottest product. People are like, I have to get that specifically because it exists, right? And
Yeah.
naturally, it had it had maybe lower margins than perhaps the standard photo, but it was priced appropriately so that it made up for that, and it was able to be the highest selling product because of it, or one of the highest selling products because the presentation mattered, right? And
Yeah.
that's our industry, right? I mean, that's the same thing with, whether it's team members, whether it's food and beverage, whether it's the coat of paint on the rides, whether it's the landscaping, the things that don't necessarily have an exact revenue tie-in, all go into how the guest experience it, what they see and feel. And then if you can tie the revenue into it, whether it's Ferris wheel appetizer or the Lego brick walls, then you're setting yourself up for success.
Now, I will tell you that had I seen those same appetizers on a sampler platter that didn't come on a Ferris wheel, I probably wouldn't have ordered them.
Right.
I might have gotten, mozzarella sticks or something, or, we may have gotten one or two apps for the table, but we wouldn't have gotten, I don't know, there were 5 or 6 different things that came on this Ferris wheel. So it's just a very different way to present it.
And then what did you do?
We posted it online.
And you know what now? I want that.
Yeah. Well, when you go to Hersheypark, you definitely have to check it out.
Exactly. That's the number one thing on my list.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Boss at Candybonium.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Well, I've got a couple more.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. Yeah. So we talk a lot about tech when it comes to the guest experience and how so many things are on your phone and things that you can do to enhance the experience that might be technologically driven. But this experience that I had at Kennywood really, to me, identified the fact that you can't take the human element out of it. So here's what we encountered. So at Kennywood, like a lot of other places, they have this, I think they call it the speedy pass. It's their cut the line pass. And you go in and there's a little booth and there's 2 people sitting there, and they will answer any questions that you have. But when it actually comes to buying it and using it, it's all on your phone. Like, they don't even sell it at that location, right? So everything you do, you put in your credit card, you do everything on your phone. And so we're like, well, just being curious, we're like, what are you here for? Like if everything is on the phone, like we buy it, and I thought their answer was perfect. They said emotional support. And it made total sense because, you got this tech thing that you're doing and you may not understand it, but they walked you through how to set it up and, how to use it in the whole 9 yards. So yes, there is that cool tech piece of it, but they also identified that we still need a person to help our guests figure this out.
Mm-hmm. And in this case, it allows them to do a lot more with their job from a guest service standpoint, because it takes out a lot of it takes out the entire transaction element of it. So, well, to that point, there's no loss prevention or cash control, component with that. And that they are able to ensure that you have the best experience with it. Otherwise, you might not, but you might get confused, frustrated, not get it at all, or get it and then later complain about it, want your money back, leave with a sour opinion on it. Or you could have those employees there for emotional support and make sure that you are able to use it to the best of its abilities. Yeah, absolutely. And they were able to, I think the cool thing that you just mentioned is they took the transaction out of it, right? And so often we identify that when there's a transaction, that's all that the interaction becomes is the transaction, right? Where they were really guest services. They were really information. Yeah. So they could kind of talk us through the different tiers of the program. Again, they could kind of show us how it worked on the phone, so that, to your point, like when we get over to Phantom's Revenge, sorry. When we go to Phantom's Revenge and we know exactly how to use it and how to use it the best way possible, it's because they explained it to us, right? And so often, when you've got a piece of tech, you're kind of left with the tech as kind of figure it out. Yes, it may be intuitive, but this really helped make that process much more palatable. Not to mention that those employees can take all the time they need, all the time you need to be able to get the information. Whereas that ride op at Phantom's Revenge, I was about to say Steel Phantom, and I was going to say Steel Vengeance. That ride up at Phantom's Revenge needs to hit the interval. So they need you to show up knowing what to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I just thought it was really cool that they said emotional support. Yeah. Like they could have said anything. They could have said, we're here for information. We're here to serve our guests. But thinking about the tech, it can be an emotional process. Like you could be very frustrated. And I think about people who may not be as comfortable with the tech, but they really want to use it and they want to take advantage of it. But they get frustrated, like hitting the wrong button and things like that. So yeah, I thought that was a cool way to talk about that. So, so two more. One actually was not at a park. So I think it was after Great Adventure. We went to the only Chicky and Pete's that I've ever seen outside of a park. It was in Bordentown, New Jersey, I think it was. And it was late at night. We were hungry, yada, yada, yada. So the server comes up to me and, very nice, very personable, bubbly, the whole 9 yards. And she's kind of talking us through the special Chicky and Pete's fries and the whole 9 yards of what their identifiers are. And we start to place our orders, and I placed mine first, which was, I think, a Caesar salad with salmon. And then, Darren and Alan made their orders, but she was not writing it down, right? She was remembering it, like some servers will do. And then she said to me, now, just so I remember, what did you want again? And I said, I wanted a hot dog. And, she laughed, and Darren and Alan laughed, and the whole 9 yards. I said, no, I wanted a Caesar salad. I felt, what's that?
With salmon. Yeah. So I didn't write that down.
Okay. So I felt this was a bit of a missed opportunity because I would have loved if she came back with a hot dog for me. Right.
So she asked you jokingly.
Well, no, she said, no, what do you, I said jokingly, I wanted a hot dog.
Right. And then when she came back to you and asked, she said, remind me what you wanted again. She was joking. Right?
No, she was not.
Oh, she was not joking.
She was not joking. She wanted to make sure she got it right.
Yeah.
And so I said, I wanted a hot dog. She laughed. It was a fun moment. But I said, no, I actually wanted the Caesar salad with salmon. So again, just like from an opportunity standpoint, if she had come back with a hot dog, and then even right after that, with a salad, I thought that would have been like just the coolest thing that she could have done. Now, what Alan and Darren pointed out, like there's no hot dogs on the menu. They don't even have hot dogs here. I'm like, I don't care. Make the salmon in the shape of a hot dog and put it in a piece of bread. I don't care, but just something to kind of continue that experience and conversation. Do you know what I mean? Like often people get those jokes or those situations kind of served up on a silver platter, and we don't take advantage of it. So to me, that was a little bit of a missed opportunity. Maybe I'm completely wrong. You can tell me if I am, but I thought that would have been a really cool gesture.
Well, once I found out that they don't have hot dogs, and so I thought, well, maybe it'll be kind of difficult unless there's like literally a Nathan's right next door. In which case, would have taken more time, would have created that memory in that moment. So I'm not in total disagreement at all. And I think the point you were making is, you said we're often served up with those opportunities, and it's about picking up on those cues of the guest in front of you, whatever that circumstance might be, and then being able to take the ball and run with it.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. Even if she said, sorry, the last guy just ate the last hot dog, even something like that would have been part of the way there. Right. And would have been more than the standard interaction than expected. So it's kind of like looking for those opportunities to go beyond the guest's expectation, even if it's just a little bit, but doing it at every possible opportunity or at, many possible opportunities.
Absolutely. And so I think what I was kind of thinking about in this is what creates the mindset for someone to think that I could do something out of the ordinary. Like as you work with people with guest experience, right? And someone is presented with this opportunity to interact with someone in a completely out of the box kind of way. Like you mentioned scripts earlier, right? This is completely non-scripted. How do people develop that? Oh, he asked for a hot dog. Well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to, make something look like a hot dog, or, just kind of think outside of, well, actually he ordered salmon and on a Caesar salad. So that's what I'm going to give him. You know what I mean? So there's a different mindset, I think, there.
Yeah. And it is how do you allow yourself to think like that? And maybe you can't do it every single day. Maybe you can't do it during the dinner rush, maybe, if you're able to build that rapport with guests, then there's those opportunities to kind of extract who is this person, what makes them unique, and what can I do to adjust my service to be able to recognize the uniqueness of this guest in front of me.
Yeah. Maybe that's it's, I don't want to say it's that simple, but it's that mindset.
Yeah. And sometimes it can just be conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the simplest, at the highest would be serving a food item that this restaurant doesn't serve, and like, yeah, that would have been like way beyond, right? There was a book I read a few years ago called Zombie Loyalists. The author's name was Peter Shankman. And he talked about how he was a big fan of, I'm blanking on the steakhouse right now. It wasn't Capital Grille. It was Morton's Steakhouse.
I think I've heard this. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So he tweeted while he was boarding a flight of just, man, I am craving a New York strip for Morton's Steakhouse right now. And when he landed and got to baggage claim, there's someone from Morton's standing there with a to-go bag with his steak, with his dinner. So that's probably along the lines of kind of like where you're going with that, right? So there's extreme examples of it. That was like, I mean, you literally like sent an employee to the airport with a free meal. Like there, this is all a PR stunt, in its entirety. And then there's probably those smaller opportunities to be able to personalize the experience for the guest.
Absolutely. And it's funny because I've heard that story. I haven't read that book, but I've heard that story from Peter, from his keynotes and things. And that's exactly what I thought of. Like that's the kind of opportunities I think we have. And, okay, the Chicken and Pete's didn't have a hot dog. They're not going to bring me a hot dog. I get it. But to me, the takeaway was, when we are served up, no pun intended, those opportunities, are we taking them?
Yeah.
Right. As a guest service provider, or even as a leader with your team. Like if you hear something with your team and you're like, oh, you kind of, let it go. Is there something in there that you should really be kind of focused in on? Like, this is a really important little thing that they just maybe kind of made an off the cuff comment, but it's critical. Like it's a bigger deal than they're making it out to be.
Right. Exactly. And you showing that you're looking for those shows that you care.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you have one more?
I have one more. Yes.
We'll do it.
Yes. And I saved this for the end because it is about how you say goodbye. Right. So
goodbye.
See ya. We're all attraction pros done.
That's how you say goodbye.
Right.
Yes.
So at most of the parks we went to, we closed them down. Right. We were on the second to last train of Steel Vengeance or whatever it was. The only reason we left wasn't because we hated it, is because the park was closing. And that happened at Kennywood, right? And it's been a while since I'd been to Kennywood, but one of the things that, throughout the day we had interacted with some employees and they said, you got to get this certain ice cream. It's the best ice cream in Pittsburgh. And we have it over at the stand at Kennywood and yada, yada, yada. So we thought, all right, we're going to time our last Phantom's Revenge ride and then have enough time, because it's kind of on the way out, to go get some ice cream. And so we did that, and we got the ice cream cones. We're sitting at a table, and I happened to hear the music that was playing. And this is another example of how audio matters. And I can't remember the song, but it was some kind of, old big band, throwback song that was talking about, you had a good day and now it's time to say goodbye. And, it kind of puts you in the mood to kind of get you out of the park. But it was saying, thanks for being here. Had a good day. We'll see you again soon. That kind of lyric. And I thought that was really cool. And then as we were walking out of Kennywood, you have to walk through a tunnel under the road to get out of Kennywood. And they have this huge red heart. And I think it just says good night. It's all lit up and everything. And it even just now gives me little goosebumps because it's such a nice send off. I think a lot of times we talk about greetings and we talk about how we welcome people, but do we talk enough about how we send people? I shouldn't say send people away, but how we
Send them home.
how we send them home, how we say goodnight, how we say goodbye in a way that would make them want to come back and reinforce all of those great moments and those great feelings that they had throughout the day, rather than park's closed, get out, that kind of thing. So it was a cool experience.
So there's a concept called the peak end rule, which I've heard a lot talking to like experienced design consultants, which says basically, we are going to remember the peaks of the experience more than when you're walking from when you're walking from Phantom's Revenge to get the ice cream, whatever it is, you're going to remember the peaks of it, and you can't just have it be all peaks, right? There needs to be the ebb and flow of the day, otherwise that would just be overly exhausting, right? But the huge components of it are the first and the lasting impression. So as far as you said, make a big deal out of greetings and rope drop and the celebrated the parks with the national anthem, all of that. But how are we saying goodbye? How are they going to remember the last experience that they have with us? That is going to be kind of what seals it all together, that follow through. Do you remember goodbyes at Universal?
Oh, yeah.
I imagine they probably still do that. For those who aren't familiar, every attraction at Universal Studios and at Islands of Adventure, I don't know if they do this in Hollywood or not, but you and I never worked there, so we can only speak on behalf of Orlando. We'll send a representative, a team member from every single attraction to the front of the park. And every attraction has its own wardrobe. So there's someone from Krusty Land, there's an MIB agent, there's someone from Revenge of the Mummy there, and all the attractions. And they might bring some plush with them just to kind of have a prop, whatever. They're there and they're just saying goodbye to guests. So you can get like one final interaction with your favorite attraction on your way out, and it's pure hospitality. Yeah. Is what it is. It's not make sure to upgrade to an annual pass. Yeah, there are those opportunities, but we just thank you very much for being here, and here's all of your favorite moments from the day all at once as you're walking out.
Yeah, and whether you bring somebody from every attraction or it's a couple of managers that are up there waving and saying thanks for being here, I do think that the way that we say goodnight or say goodbye is important. Now, if somebody leaves during the middle of the day, they don't get that.
Correct.
Right. So it's and maybe as they go through the turnstile, the exit turnstile, at a bigger park, they may, have the employee that says that the person that's standing right there. But I also thought about, at a smaller facility, like a family entertainment center or a trampoline park, where they do their activity and maybe there's nobody near the door and they just leave. And is there an opportunity there to have more of a send off?
Yeah, there absolutely should be something. And in your case, it was it didn't even require a human. It was all built in. It was the song, it was the lights, it was the big heart kind of at the entrance to the tunnel there. Even when you drive off of Walt Disney property, there's a big Mickey Mouse sign that says "See you real soon."
Yeah,
and it just acknowledges the departure. When you come in, you cross a threshold, right? You go through the turnstile and you are leaving your regular life. You're now entering this new environment. And then on the reverse, you can't just snap your fingers and be back into it. You need to cross back over the threshold and kind of package it all together and have it be complete. So we could very easily branch off into that. Maybe we do a whole nother episode on that. But something kind of like, at least like a lot of things to percolate there as far as how the experience finishes and ends.
And maybe it's even just a question that we ask more people.
Yeah. So those listening, how do you end your experience, right? How
there you go.
does the guest end their experience, and how do you say goodbye?
Yeah.
Whether it's during the day or whether it's at night.
Excellent. So those are my kind of big takeaways, my experience for Coaster Nerd Con 22. As a bit of context, we did 10 parks in 8 days. We rode 46 different roller coasters and we took 138 coaster rides. So obviously multiple rides on many different coasters, which is a record for us. We'd only done 100 in the past. That was our maximum. So we're getting better at this, but had a great time. And every time I go on these trips, yes, it's for fun and it's to nerd out, like we talked about earlier. But I also love taking away some of these nuggets that may help other facilities, or even just things for me to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And being able to always be on the lookout for what you can share, whether it's on social media or on a podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
awesome.
So is it time to say goodbye on this episode?
I think so. We hope you all enjoyed the last hour or so with us. It's been great for us. We look forward to seeing you again in our next episode. If you enjoyed this, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. We're on Google Podcasts. Follow us on YouTube. So now I'm into like housekeeping notes here. Make sure to upgrade to to an annual pass.
There you go.
But most importantly, just remember that we are all attraction pros.
Thanks for listening to the Attraction Pros podcast.
Make sure to subscribe so you can tune in when new episodes release. And even better, please leave us a review on iTunes.
For more information, visit attractionpros.com.